The Eagles have been busy this offseason, making big moves left and right, but it's no secret that they're not done yet, and some recent huge updates around the NFL could help reveal what could be coming next, including why Mekhi Becton could be the Birds' next free agent to return, along with a new important development on the Myles Garrett trade front, plus how likely is it that the Eagles could go after the NFL's latest superstar to be put on the trade block, and what are some other realistic targets for the Birds entering free agency. Oh, and also, what's going on with Darius Slay and Gardner Johnson, and what could it mean going forward? Well, we're going to talk about that and all the other latest news starting right now. The NFL offseason is officially in full swing, which means that it's officially Howie season in Philadelphia. I mean, think about it. Like, what this guy has done already this offseason in such a short amount of time is just insane. As in the span of 2 days, not only did he wrap up Saquon Barkley through 2028 with a record contract extension, but he also turned around the next day and obviously re-signed linebacker Zack Baun to a 3-year deal as well. And not only is it obviously amazing to be able to go out and extend both probably the two best players at their respective positions from last season's for the long term, but it also just shows you that Howie Roseman is very willing to adapt. I mean, think about it. For years now, we've heard that the Eagles simply don't pay running backs. They don't pay linebackers, but that's exactly what they did this offseason, and I think that pretty much everyone would agree that those were the right moves to make. So, again, I mean, Howie is adapting right before our eyes, and that's on top of the fact that what he's been able to do over this maybe 3 or 4 year stretch is just absolutely insane. I mean, the guy is in a league of his own among GMs when it comes to roster building, as he has been the absolute king of big free agency signings, huge trades, the NFL draft, and most applicable to, as of right now, wrapping up guys on long-term, high-paying contract extensions. I mean, look at all these guys that he's been able to get under contract since the 2023 offseason for the long term, whether it's Jalen Hurts and Lane Johnson in 2023, who have been wrapped up through 2028 and 2026 respectively, or A.J. Brown, Landon Dickerson, Devontae Smith, and Jordan Mailata in 2024, all of which are at least, again, under contract until 2028. And then, of course, most recently this offseason, he's already signed Saquon Barkley, and he's already signed Zack Baun to long-term contract extensions as well. I mean, Howie just continues to pull off the absolute impossible. It really does seem like the Eagles find ways to pay everybody, and the fact of the matter is no other team does it like this. I mean, look at an organization like the Cincinnati Bengals, for example, who, just placed T. Higgins under a franchise tag for the second straight offseason. I mean, they have consistently struggled to pay their guys and wrap guys up for the long term, but Howie just makes it look easy. He finds a way to make it all work, and now their core is going to be wrapped up for the next 3, 4, 5 seasons, and the Super Bowl window is obviously wide open. Moral of the story, Howie Roseman's a genius. He's one of the greatest GMs of all time, and this offseason specifically, he's not done yet. And obviously, with Zack Baun's deal getting done very recently, everyone's kind of now wondering, what's next for the Eagles. And a guy that's been on a lot of people's minds is free agent offensive lineman Mekhi Becton, just considering the fact that he's probably the Eagles' top remaining free agent that realistically could re-sign this offseason. And a recent article from Tony Pauline only further solidifies that, as he previewed Becton's free agency, saying, quote, "Offensive lineman Mekhi Becton is drawing a lot of interest, as I predicted in an article several months ago. I'm told teams are looking at Becton as a guard primarily, but who can move to tackle if need be. The 2020 first-round pick of the Jets was a late signing in free agency by the Philadelphia Eagles last year, then went on to have a sensational season, helping pave the way for Saquon Barkley. And this is the key part right here. I'm told the preference for Becton is to re-sign with the Eagles in free agency, as he's comfortable with the franchise that helped him reclaim his career. However, it's a matter of whether Philadelphia can fit him in the budget. It may take a while for Becton to sign with the team, hence, I don't see something happening immediately once free agency opens." So that's all definitely very interesting. I think we kind of already knew a lot of that, because again, I think we've heard all offseason that Becton does want to return to Philadelphia, just considering that, it's the place that helped him revive his career. Jeff Stoutland really helped get the best out of him as a player, and he very clearly has a lot of love for his teammates in the locker room, for the team, and for the city of Philadelphia. So again, it's no secret that he wants to be back, but it's just going to be about, whether the Eagles and him can reach an agreement that's fair for both sides, because obviously these other teams out in free agency are very much going to be able to offer him a lot more than the Eagles can. So I guess the question is, can they find some middle ground and find a number that works again for both sides? And it does sound like we might not get a resolution on that for a while, just with what Pauline said there at the end about Becton probably not signing with the team early in free agency. So I guess we're just going to have to see how it all plays out. Personally, of course, I would love to have Becton back, and I'm hoping the Eagles Eagles can find a way to get a deal done, but again, we'll just have to wait and see what happens. And a similar thing can be said about tight end Dallas Goedert, as even though he's not a free agent like Becton is, he is in a pretty interesting situation, given that he's 30 years old, he's got just 1 year remaining on his contract, and he has no guaranteed money left in that deal. And recently, Eagles reporter Jeff McClain provided some insight on what the Eagles could possibly look to do with Goedert, as he talked to an agent that says due to Goedert's age and due to his contract situation, he is no slam dunk to return to Philadelphia for his 8th season, although he did note that they don't exactly have an obvious starting tight end replacement, as they did back when they decided to move on from Zach Ertz going to Goedert. And reporter Zack Baun also seems to believe that some sort of move is coming regarding Goedert soon, as he said, quote, even though he's under contract, he has no guaranteed money on his contract. The Eagles can rework his deal, maybe guaranteeing this year's salary and bringing the cap number down. They can trade him if they're ready to commit beyond this year. I don't believe they'll cut him, but I don't think they sit still. So, I mean, yeah, this is just a really hard situation to read because on one hand, Goedert's obviously one of the best tight ends in football when he's healthy. He's instrumental to the Eagles' pass and run games, and he's coming off a fantastic postseason run. However, the fact that he's going into the final year of his deal with no guaranteed money and he's over 30 years old is definitely worth noting. Now, personally, I'm not really buying into all the Goedert trade rumors simply because they do not have a replacement plan in place yet, and I feel like the smart thing for them to do would be to either restructure his contract for this final season and have him play it out, or extend him for one other season so he's here for the next 2 years, and then you draft a tight end in this year's draft and have him learn behind Goedert for 1 or 2 seasons, whichever you decide to do, and then after that, you can move on from Goedert and have the guy you drafted take his place. But again, this is an interesting situation. It does seem like a move regarding Dallas Goedert is coming soon, so we'll just have to wait and see what happens. And we'll also just have to wait and see what happens with Darius Slay, as obviously the Eagles just released him not too long ago, but a return is still possible according to recent reports, and also according to Slay himself, who has made it clear that he has no hard feelings towards Philly, and if possible, he would love to return. Now, I've said this already, and I'll say it again, if the money works out and Slay is willing to take a much cheaper contract to come back to Philly for one final season, then I think it makes sense. Or so I thought, as some drama that has played out the past several days makes it seem like things may not quite be trending in that direction, as some apparent quote-unquote beef between Slay and Eagles safety CJ Gardner Johnson has left a bad taste in a lot of fans' mouths. Which basically, just to fill you in, this started when Slay released the latest episode of his podcast, and said that if he did leave, he thinks Reed Blankenship or maybe a veteran addition could be the guy to step up as a leader with him gone.
I do got a great leadership role in that secondary room, but I won't be surprised if Reed and them guys like Reed can, advance these guys. Reed been around me and a lot of other veterans that been here before, and I'm sure he could lead that group the right way. Because that's who I feel will be leading the group if I ain't in that building is Reed Blankenship, because he's a great leader. You know what I'm saying? He is a great damn leader. If they bring another veteran in that's already been playing a lot, I can see them coming in and being a leader as well. But for sure, if I'm not in that room, Reed Blankenship, will be a great, tremendous leader.
Now, when I first saw this clip, I honestly didn't think too much of it, and in fact, I actually thought it was kind of cool to see Slay giving Blankenship some much-deserved love, because I personally think he's one of the Birds' most underrated players and leaders. However, at the same time, I don't necessarily agree with Slay's comments about adding a veteran, and I don't think the Eagles need to do that, and it was also pretty surprising that he didn't mention CJ Gardner Johnson as a guy that could help fill that leadership void, considering that he's already kind of proven to be one of the emotional leaders of this football team. And CJ himself seems to have taken offense to Slay's comments, as he's kind of gone on a crazy Twitter rant these past few days, posting a bunch of stuff pretty much just calling out Slay's comments, saying that he was, quote, sneak dissing him, and they don't need to add a veteran, among other things. To which Slay then eventually responded saying, quote, "We just won a Super Bowl together. I do not have no problem or hate towards bruh. Reed is in our leadership council, which is why I said what I said. I would expect him to be the next guy up. It's nothing but love on my end if you really know me. You all have a blessed day. # world champs." Yeah, so obviously there's a lot going on here, but I would say this, who freaking cares, these guys just literally won a Super Bowl together for the Eagles, so I got nothing but love for both of them. Do I disagree with what CJ said? No, I honestly don't, but also, do I think Slay was trying to diss him? I don't know, maybe, maybe not. There's really no way of knowing, but what I just don't agree with is now everyone going and picking sides and specifically hating on and attacking Slay and literally digging up clips trying to make it look like he's hating on the Eagles intentionally, when I think all these things are just kind of being blown out of proportion, to be honest with you.
If you check the podcast out, that's all I do is brag on my dog, man, because people got the game messed up. Like I said, if people don't want to put him in that category, he in that category. You know what I'm saying? I appreciate this man to death.
And AJ Brown seems pretty sick of it too, as he posted a string of since deleted things on Twitter, basically calling out some of these Eagles fans for always stirring up the drama and picking sides. And again, I'm not going to do that. Like if Slay does come back, I'm sure they'll be able to work it out and be just fine. Now, if he doesn't, which I would definitely say seems a lot more likely now with this whole thing happening, then that's cool too. I mean, either way, I still got nothing but love for both CJ and Slay for what they've done, literally both helping win our Eagles a Super Bowl. But now, moving over to some big NFC East news, the Cowboys are surprisingly making moves, as in recent days, they've restructured both the contracts of Dak Prescott and CeeDee Lamb, freeing up $56.6 million in cap space in the process, which you would have to imagine that has something to do with Micah Parsons' pending extension, as he's expected to become one of the highest paid players, probably the highest paid non-quarterback in the entire league very soon, so we'll see how Dallas manages that whole situation. In the meantime, though, the highest paid non-QB title belongs to the Raiders' Max Crosby, as on Wednesday he signed a 3-year extension with Vegas worth $106.5 million, including $91.5 million in guaranteed money. And not only is this absolutely insane, but it also shuts down any speculation that maybe Crosby could be a blockbuster Eagles trade target, as I've seen many of my commenters mention in the past. Plus, it completely resets the defensive end and edge rusher market, and likely raises the price tags for guys like Parsons, and of course, Eagles free agent Josh Sweat, who, once again, is extremely likely to sign elsewhere in free agency, especially now that Crosby's deal puts him even more out of the Birds' price range. Plus, we can't forget about Myles Garrett, as he's another guy who likely could one day become the highest paid non-QB in the entire league, and also, he has of course been consistently linked to Philadelphia this entire offseason. Speaking of which, we just got another update on that whole situation from NFL insider Ian Rappaport, and it's probably not what a lot of you were hoping for.
Even though they cleared some cap space yesterday, here's what I want to point out. If the Eagles were going to take on a huge contract for Myles Garrett, and if he gets traded anywhere, he is going to be the highest paid non-quarterback in the NFL, no doubt about it. In order to take on that contract, they would have to get rid of other very big contracts of their own. Even the Eagles can't just fit everybody they want. I would be very surprised if this happened. It is a great rumor. It's a great rumor, but I'd be very surprised if this happened.
Yeah, I mean, this maybe could be a bit of a surprise to some, but to me, this isn't really unexpected, because the more and more we've heard Howie talk this offseason and we've seen different things come out, it just seems like getting Garrett is kind of a stretch due to both the price tag of actually trading for him, and also, more notably, the cost of his incoming extension. Now that said, anything is always possible with Howie Roseman, and there is no doubt in my mind that he's both checked in on Garrett, and that he also could find a way to structure or backload the contract to make all the money work out. However, as much as it does feel like it sometimes, the Eagles simply just cannot pay everybody that they want to, and with a bunch of guys already on long-term high-paying contracts, plus with more young players needing to be signed in the near to distant future, a Garrett trade and extension would be really, really tough to pull off. So I personally at this point don't really think it's going to happen. I could be wrong and I'll never rule it out, but that's just how it feels to me at this current point in time. That said, what about a guy like Trey Hendrickson from the Bengals? As Cincinnati just granted the superstar edge rusher permission to seek a trade, so could he be a more realistic option for the Eagles? Well, first, I want to start by saying, if you could somehow add Hendrickson, a guy who led the NFL in sacks this past year and has had 17.5 sacks in each of the past 2 seasons alongside Jalen Carter and Nolan Smith on this defensive line, then that would just be absolutely insane and terrifying for NFL offenses. And honestly, I do think that Hendrickson is a more likely target than Garrett, since unlike the Browns, the Bengals have said publicly that they are willing to trade him. Plus, in terms of an extension, I don't think he would cost quite as much as Garrett either. That said, Hendrickson is still going to get a huge bag, which is the reason why the Bengals are going to end up trading him in the first place, as he's set to enter the last year of his current contract in 2025, in which he has a cap hit of $18 million. So, again, if the Eagles were to trade for him, they'd have to do an extension and give him a pay raise, which, like Garrett, would be tough. So again, I'm not going to rule it out, and this will definitely be an interesting situation to watch, but again, I just don't see it being super realistic, but who knows. Now that said, the Eagles still definitely are going to need to address the edge rusher position this offseason, and there's some interesting names that they could go after. And one guy that some people have started mentioning recently is now former Charger Joey Bosa, who was just released by LA on Wednesday. Now, Bosa is obviously a big name. He was at one point a bona fide star in this league, and he was named a Pro Bowler just this past season. However, on the flip side of that, he's on the older side, definitely the downside of his career, as he had just 5 sacks last season. He's also pretty injury prone, as he's missed 23 games over the past 3 years, and he's still probably going to be a bit outside the Eagles' price range. Plus, Bosa probably isn't too fond of Eagles fans either after what happened the last time he was at the link.
Hey, when did the Chargers play this week?
Are you Snapchatting your little butt buddies?
Videoing you. The guy who's not playing today. How are those fines, Bosa?
You're good, because I can afford them.
So can I. Me too. Me too.
I don't know. I mean, maybe for the right price, Bosa could make some sense, but personally, I mean, with the injury history and just everything else, I think I'd pass. Besides, there's already a bunch of other cheaper guys on the free agent market that the Eagles could target, such as Malcolm Koonce from the Raiders, who had 8 sacks in 2023, but an injury that cost him all last season should lower his market value. And then there's also Azeez Ojulari from the Giants, who is another guy that has been a bit limited by injuries, but he's a lot younger than Bosa and has a lot of talent. Then you got Chauncey Golston from the Cowboys, who had 5.5 sacks last year. There's Joseph Osai from Cincinnati, who had 5 sacks. And there's also a bunch more options that I don't have the time to list in this video. So it's definitely going to be interesting to see what the Eagles want to do at edge rusher as we get into free agency. And it could be a similar story at defensive tackle, as again, Milton Williams is likely going to get paid north of $20 million a season, and the Eagles just can't afford that. Which, side note, if Milton Sweat both leave and are paid north of $20 million a season, that means that the Eagles could be awarded 2 third-round compensatory picks in 2026. So that's pretty awesome, especially since we know how dangerous Howie can be making trades and acquiring assets via draft picks. But that aside, the Eagles are definitely going to need to find a way to replace Milt's production, and while I expect a lot of that to come internally, they could also look to the free agent market to add depth. And if they do that, then maybe they can consider a former Eagle in Javon Hargrave, as he was just released by the 49ers on Thursday, and despite the fact that he's over 30 years old and he just missed pretty much the entirety of last season with a torn tricep, I'd be lying if I said that I didn't like the idea of having the Gravedigger back in Philly for the right price. I mean, let's be real. He was a fantastic pass rusher for the Birds in his last 2 seasons here, putting up 7.5 sacks and 11.5 sacks respectively. And then in his first year with the Niners, he was pretty good too, as he had 7 sacks. So, you know, despite the injury and his age, I think he's still got plenty left in the tank. And if you could bring him in as a rotational pass rusher on the defensive line on a cheaper deal, that's key. It's got to be cheap. Then I do think that that would be a good move. That said, there's a bunch of different directions they could go here, along with just what they could do in free agency in general. So I want to know your guys' thoughts down in the comments. Who should they sign in free agency? Do you think a blockbuster trade for Myles Garrett or Trey Hendrickson could be possible? Again, I want to hear all your thoughts down in the comments below. And also, while you're at it, make sure you guys subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss any other videos or any other content just like this. I've actually been going live a lot more recently, so I want to try and do that more. And again, if you don't want to miss it, then make sure you hit that notification bell, and also leave a like down below as well just to help support the channel. It really does help me out a ton, guys. Let's see if we can get to at least 600 likes on today's video. And also, if you want to watch another Eagles video going over the Zack Baun re-signing, among other things, you can check this out right here. And now with all that being said, that's pretty much all I got for this one, guys. So thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.